Accreditation. I'm Tara. I've worked in the industry for a long time, and I am now working for JICMAIL. I've done that for about 3 years. Some of you today will be very familiar with JICMAIL. I've spotted a couple of gold certificate holders in the audience, some less so. So I thought I had better explain very basically what JICMAIL is, get everyone up to date. I also want to talk about why it is important to our industry. It's a very good question if people ask that. We need to know why it matters to us. And also, lastly, I'm going to cover how we can use it. So I'm going to dive straight in. Just for some clarification, there's been 2 separate elements happening at the same time. For circulation data, a request has come through access operators and mailing houses to share what is effectively the accurate picture of who is mailing what when, and that is to allow Nielsen to share that data and really update the fact that it currently uses estimated data. That request you can opt out of, but you do that through your access operator, and that's opting out of sharing that information. The JICMAIL audience research data, which I'm going to talk about today, is entirely separate, but we're talking about that now because the funding model has changed for JICMAIL. Previously, it was a subscription. You had to pay for the data to be able to access it. It was very limited into how you could reach it. Now, everyone can access that data because it is funded by a levy on postage. So for direct mail and door drops, every £3 of postage comes to JICMAIL. You can opt out of the paying the levy, but you do that through talking directly to JICMAIL. It's an entirely separate process, and these are 2 entirely separate things. That is just so you're super clear. There has been confusion. That's just to make sure everyone understands those 2 different requests. So I'm going to talk about the audience research data. This is the data that tells us what is happening in the home when recipients get your mail, when they get door drops, direct mail, or business mail. So first things first, how is the data collected? You need to know where the data comes from if you can trust it. We at JICMAIL have Kantar to run a panel of 1,000 households, and those households record their activity with mail over a 28-day period. They do that with an app on their phone. They take a photograph of the item, and they use the drop-down menu within the app or on a desktop to record their activity with mail. Once a quarter, that data is collected and sent over to JICMAIL for us to share, to promote, to interrogate, and to train people to use. And just so we can see some context, audience research data for different channels to market has existed for quite a long time. Bob is the one most people have heard of, the telly, people in the home recording their TV viewing. Again, that is used so people can advertise better with that channel. So we are catching up. JICMAIL sits alongside Radio for radio, Root for outdoor, PAMCO for newspapers and magazines. Give that a bit of context. And we are a non-profit organisation, and we represent the whole of the mail industry. So we're representing the advertisers and agencies as well as the sell side with Whistle and Royal Mail. And some of our subscribers are on screen now. This kind of paints that picture of the data being used right through the process, from the end advertiser right through to the postal operator, agencies and mailing houses in between. And again, for those of you who aren't familiar with what we are talking about here, these are the building blocks of JICMAIL. It is a single example, legal in general. We know some information about the item. We know some information about who it was sent to. And we then can build that picture from their activity of a calendar view of what they've done, when they've opened it, when they've looked at it, when they've read it, when they have gone online, or gone in store because of it. So that brings me to kind of the second point in today's presentation. Why is that important? Why does that matter to our industry? So I popped on screen. Some of you will be completely familiar with this, maybe some less so. But when you use digital marketing activity, you have a dashboard. You see every time someone clicks or shares or goes online. You can often see a lot of activity around that, where people have come from, where they go next. And this is all immediately available, or if not immediate, within 24 hours. With mail, this is what we have got. Those doors are closed. When that piece of mail lands on the doormat, we do not know, without JICMAIL, when someone picks it up, whether they talk to somebody about the item, whether they go online, whether they stick it to the fridge, how often they read, how much they do with it. This is why JICMAIL is so important for our industry. It shines a light, it illuminates that activity with mail, so that we can then say we have a picture of all of these bits of information that are on screen now. How long people keep it, whether they share it, how frequently they interact with it, whether they go online because of it, what content might drive what action. This is why it is so vital to our industry. Attribution is so difficult. We need to be able to see what is happening with this mail so that we can tell people about it. Because of course, people, when you don't see what's happening, then obviously there could be a question of, what is happening with my mail? How does it work? This allows us to use industry data to explain what is happening with mail. Lastly, and one of the most important things, of course, how can I use the JICMAIL data? The JICMAIL data is fantastic. There's loads and loads of insight. But what do I do with it? How do I share that with customers? So I've come up with kind of 5 ways of being able to help use JICMAIL when you're talking to customers, right through from lead generation, looking for those new prospects, interesting people in what you do, underpinning that with JICMAIL data, through to those sales presentations. So when you're in front of a client, when you're talking to them, intersperse it with industry research data, using it for proactive and reactive proposals. When they become a client, include some information in those client review meetings you have. And also, lastly, when people ask questions, when people say, what is going to happen when I do use a piece of mail? We have an answer with JICMAIL. I'm going to give you a few examples here. This is not comprehensive. This is just some examples that might help. So, for example, and just on screen, again for context, this is the mail item database. We have 2 basic kinds of data within JICMAIL, sector level, but also you can see those individual journeys like the legal and general one I showed earlier. But this allows you to have a look at, in the charity sector, for example, or the mail order and retail as I've got online, who has sent mail in 2020? This gives you a way of being able to see, what are my customers doing? What are my prospects doing? Gives you some background there. You can also use sections of the data to interest your prospects. Do they know these things about the mail in their sector? Again, the example online is for families and how long different families with different age groups of children keep their mail in the home for TV and broadband mail. That might be useful to them. This is one example. There are many across different sectors and different customer categories and different mail types. We can also show customers what has actually happened with an example of mail if a panelist has recorded that. So naturally, with a panel of 1,000 households, they will record more of bigger mailers than smaller mailers. But where you can find an example like the one on screen, here Santander mailed in December, they got an item on one day, the following day the recipient had a look at it, talked to somebody else about it. 2 weeks later, that person picked it up and bought something. This sort of information would not be easily available without JICMAIL being able to show this is the kind of thing that happens. Different example here, this is to show the wider effects of mail. So again, within the JICMAIL data, we have reach data, how many people see an item, whether it's shared, frequency data, how much interaction there is with that piece, how often it's returned to. When you combine those and multiply it by the amount you're mailing, then you see that wider impact of mail. It's shared more times, it's interacted with more times. This is a common metric in all other media. Number of eyeballs, number of times an advert is seen, it's the same thing. For us, it's often between 4 and 5 times as many as the items sending out. So it's very powerful, shows how many people that mailing item is reaching and how many times. Really important. You can put that into proposals, into presentations, showing customers the wider impact of mail. You can perform competitor analysis. So where you've got 2 different competitors with the data in the mail item database, we can do some comparison. How are they doing? Benchmarking against their competitors. What are the competitors doing? And does it work for them? Or in this case, could one of these supermarkets be doing something different? Do they want to be doing something different? And then lastly, JICMAIL allows us to answer questions. So, for example, here, what results can I expect from my campaign? We can give an indicative response. If someone comes to me and says, I want to do a loyalty program, I'm going to use a printed reward statement, what will happen? I can give them an indicative response, caveated, so it's based on everybody who's received a loyalty reward statement for any company that's on the panel. But out of those, 85% have opened it within that 28-day period, and 34% have used a voucher or discount code. So a third will use the voucher or discount code that you're sending with that loyalty reward statement to buy something. It will drive sales. So it isn't me guessing. It's not me saying, well, somebody else did this, so it might work for you. This is audience research data we can use to say what happens with a piece of mail. So hopefully that's given you a taster of what JICMAIL is, why it is important, and how you can use it. If you are interested in knowing a bit more about JICMAIL, obviously seeing it for yourself, as I've said, the data is free to access for everybody now because it's paid for by a levy on postage. So you're very welcome to access the data directly, become an accredited partner, you sign a data agreement, agree an adoption plan, and then we can show you how to be using JICMAIL data within the planning and the proposals that you do. And we do have a platinum partner offer on the table, but that is for where the data is embedded within your system. That will be awarded initially in September.